I knew the exact sound her boots made on the archive stairs. It was not something I had decided to learn. It happened the way snow learns the shape of a roof, slowly, without choosing. She arrived at Greyvale, 7 days after the first anniversary of Mara's death, sent by the Scholars Hall to catalog my late Luna's private library before the books were transferred to the Keep's collections. A quiet task, a forgettable one. The steward assigned her a corner of the east wing, gave her a candle allowance and a cot in the servants' row, promptly ceased to think about her. I did not cease to think about her. I could not have told you why, not at first. I was not in the habit of thinking about anyone. Grief is a very efficient warden. It locks the doors, keeps the rooms empty, and tells you this is how things must remain now. For 3 years I had let it. My wolf had gone somewhere deep inside me after Mara died. Silence so complete that my counsel whispered about it, worried the bond had broken something permanent in me. I attended my duties. Every alliance match my counsel arranged, though they arranged them often, and with great optimism. I slept badly and worked long and considered that sufficient then. Senna came to catalog the library, found myself walking past the archive door, not entering. I am not a man who enters uninvited, but I walked past it, twice in a morning, once near dusk, and I told myself I was checking on the progress of the work. She had a system. I could see through the gap in the door. The oldest manuscripts to the left, the newer volumes sorted by subject, every book opened flat and its first page read before being placed. She handled them the way a healer handles wounds. Careful, unhurried, treating each one as if it mattered. Mara had loved those books the same way. Not explain why that did not hurt the way it should have. It hurt, yes, but differently. Softer. Grief, learning to share the room with something else. I did not examine it. I simply noted the hour she arrived each morning, just after first light, and the hour she slept, just before the evening bell, and I told myself, this was ordinary attention to the functioning of my household. For a year I told myself that. She never sought me out. She was unfailingly respectful when we passed in the corridor, a quiet nod, her eyes down, but not the shrinking kind of deference. More the kind that belongs to a person who simply knows her own business and does not need yours. She spoke to the wolves easily. 2 of my old pack wolves had taken to sleeping outside the archive door, the steward found inexplicable, and I did not explain. I knew why. She fed them from her own supper. I had seen it once through the window, half her bread gone to the gray old one with the torn ear. And she had glanced up and caught me watching, and gone still for a moment before she away. I had walked on without a word, and gone back to my chambers and sat with it for an hour, and counted that a great act of restraint. I told myself I was being sensible. A widowed king does not let himself become foolish over the quiet archivist cataloging his dead wife's books. There were 100 reasons to leave that door closed. I left it closed and noted her hours and counted them a full year, and thought myself entirely in command of the situation. Lord Vane of Crestmore arrived for the Northern Treaty in the first frost of the new season. He was a reasonable man, capable, fair-minded, precisely the sort of guest I might have found wholly unremarkable on any other occasion. He sat at the head table for the evening feast, made good conversation, and at some point in the second hour, I became aware that he had found his way to the far end of the hall, where Senna had come to return a borrowed volume to the keep's steward before leaving for the night. I watched him speak to her. I watched her look up, a little startled, then composed and answer him. I watched him laugh. I watched him lean slightly forward, interested, attentive, the way a man leans when he is deciding something. Something in my chest cracked, broke, cracked, the way river ice cracks in the first thaw. A sound you feel more than hear, deep and irreversible. My wolf, silent for 3 years, 3 years of that warden's dark and no sound at all, came awake in a single moment. Not a surge, not a howl, a cold, clear, furious certainty, like a blade finding its edge after long disuse. Mard arrived without my permission. I set down my cup. I stood. My captain of the guard glanced at me, read my face, and wisely said nothing. I crossed the hall at a pace that was not quite a walk, and arrived at Lord Vane's side in time to hear him telling her that his own hold had a fine scholars collection. Perhaps she might consider a position there, cataloging and expanding it. Very generous terms. He was looking at her with an expression I recognized. The expression of a man who sees something rare and is already moving to secure it before someone else does. He was not wrong to want to. That was the part that cracked the ice further. I said, "Lord Vane," and he turned, and whatever he saw in my expression made him straighten very slightly. I said, "I believe you have been speaking with my archivist." Pause that followed was brief and diplomatic. He said, "I was not aware she was formally engaged to your hold's permanent service, my lord." He was correct. She had been here on a temporary scholarly appointment for 1 year. The appointment had ended 2 weeks ago, quietly, and I had said nothing about it. I had simply not asked the steward to discharge her, and she had simply continued to come to the archive each morning, and we had both, apparently, tended this was a settled arrangement without ever once discussing it. I looked at her then. Her expression was very careful, very still. Her wrist, the sleeve of her left arm had slid back slightly when she turned to face me, and there, in the candlelight, on the inside of her wrist was a mark I recognized, faint pale gold like old ink on pale paper, a mate mark, small, half-formed, patient. She had known. She had known for a year, had said nothing, had simply come every morning and done her work, and fed my wolves her bread and handled Mara's books with the same care she gave everything, and she had not once pressed the matter, or made any demand that I see her. I said quietly, "To Lord Vane, she is engaged here, she has been for some time. I am sorry for any confusion." Then I looked at her, only at her, and I said, "Will you stay?" Not a command. I was aware it was not a command, and that it mattered greatly that it was not. She looked at me for a long moment. The gray wolf with the torn ear had padded in, silently from the corridor, and was now sitting on her left foot with great determination, as if it had its own vote in this matter, and intended to cast it clearly, she said. "The Ravel manuscripts still need cross-referencing. I was going to finish them in the spring," I said. "Then stay for the spring," she said. "And after," I said, "stay for that too." The mark on her wrist blazed warm and certain in the candlelight, and somewhere deep in my chest my wolf lay down, not in the silence of grief, this time, but in the quiet of something finally, irrevocably found. Lord Vane made his farewells the following morning and departed with grace, and I did not mourn his going. I had marked her hours for a year without knowing why. I know why now. Mara's library has 2 guardians in it, the memory of the woman who built it and the woman who stayed to tend it. I think, if Mara had known her, she would have found that fitting. I think she would have been glad. Senna told me once in the archive that the books already seemed to know her, that they opened easily for her, that the oldest ones felt like familiar hands. I believe it. The right things have a way of finding their place, if you leave the door open long enough. I left it open for a year without knowing I had. She stood in the light of it and waited, and never once asked me to hurry.